Captain Elena Vasquez walked across the hangar bay floor, her boots echoing against the metal deck plating. Around her, the other pilots gathered near their sleek interceptors and heavy assault fighters, their voices carrying across the cavernous space of the orbital station. The laughter that followed her wasn't new, but it still stung every time she heard it. "Look at Vasquez heading for that ancient relic again," called out Lieutenant Morrison, a cocky pilot from the Terran Defense Corps. "I swear that thing belongs in a museum, not a combat squadron." The object of their ridicule sat in the corner of the hangar, looking decidedly out of place among the modern fleet. While the other ships gleamed with fresh paint and the latest technological upgrades, Elena's chosen vessel appeared almost primitive. Its hull was a matte black that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, and its design was angular and sharp rather than the smooth curves of contemporary fighters. "Seriously, Vasquez," said Captain Torres, shaking his head as he ran a hand along the wing of his brand-new Starfire interceptor. "Command gave you clearance to pick any ship in the entire fleet, and you chose that old bucket of bolts. It doesn't even have plasma cannons." Elena ignored their comments and continued her pre-flight inspection, running her hands along the ship's surface with practiced familiarity. She had chosen this particular fighter for reasons they couldn't understand, reasons that went far beyond flashy weapon systems or polished hulls. This ship had something the others lacked, something that would matter when it counted. The hangar bay doors opened with a mechanical rumble, and Commander Sarah Chen strode in, her uniform crisp and her expression serious. The assembled pilots immediately straightened to attention, their casual banter dying away as she approached the briefing area. "Listen up, people," Chen announced, her voice carrying easily across the space. "We've received a priority distress signal from the mining colony on Kepler 442c. They're under attack by unknown hostiles, and initial reports suggest these aren't pirates or raiders. We're talking about something entirely different." Elena felt her pulse quicken as she continued her inspection, listening carefully to every word. The other pilots exchanged glances, their earlier joking forgotten in the face of a real mission. "The colony's defense grid is down, and their communication array is damaged," Chen continued. "We're going in blind with no intelligence on enemy numbers, capabilities, or intentions. This is a search and rescue operation with potential for heavy combat." Lieutenant Morrison raised his hand. "What kind of time frame are we looking at, Commander?" "The distress signal was sent 6 hours ago. At maximum burn, we can reach the system in 4 hours, but that doesn't leave much fuel for maneuvering once we arrive. We'll need to be smart about this." Elena finished her inspection and climbed into her ship's cockpit, the familiar embrace of the pilot's seat welcoming her like an old friend. Around her, the other pilots were doing the same, their modern fighters humming to life with the characteristic whine of fusion reactors spinning up. Her ship's startup sequence was different, quieter. Instead of the aggressive growl of a military engine, her fighter came online with barely a whisper. The controls were analog in places where the others were digital, and her heads-up display was simpler, more direct. But Elena knew what she had chosen and why. "All right, people," Commander Chen's voice crackled over the comm system. "Standard formation for jump. We'll reassess once we reach the target system. Remember, we're dealing with civilians down there. Whatever's happening, there are innocent people counting on us to get them out." The pilots acknowledged the order, and Elena felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that came before a mission. Around her, the other fighters were already moving toward the launch bay, their engines glowing bright blue against the darkness of space beyond. As Elena guided her ship toward the launch sequence, she heard Morrison's voice over a private channel. "Hey, Vasquez, try not to fall behind in that antique. We don't want to have to come back for you when the real fighting starts." Elena smiled grimly and switched off the private channel without responding. Morrison and the others would understand soon enough. When the time came for real fighting, when the situation demanded something beyond flashy displays and overwhelming firepower, they would see what her choice really meant. The launch bay doors opened, revealing the star-filled void beyond. One by one, the fighters launched into space, their engines leaving brief trails of superheated gas before the vacuum swallowed the light. Elena's ship slipped out among them, nearly invisible against the cosmic background. As they formed up for the jump to hyperspace, Elena ran through her ship's systems one more time. Everything was exactly as it should be. The other pilots might not understand her choice now, but they would. When the time came for precision over power, for subtlety over spectacle, they would understand exactly why she had chosen this particular fighter. The jump coordinates locked in, and Commander Chen's voice came over the squadron frequency. All ships, prepare for hyperspace jump in 10 seconds. Remember, we don't know what we're jumping into, so stay alert. Elena gripped her controls and felt the familiar anticipation building. Whatever waited for them at Kepler 442c, whatever unknown hostiles had attacked the mining colony, she was ready. Her ship might look like an antique to the others, but Elena knew better. She had made her choice for a reason, and soon that reason would become clear to everyone. The stars stretched and blurred as the squadron entered hyperspace, leaving the safety of the orbital station behind. In 4 hours, they would emerge in the target system and face whatever had attacked the colony. Elena settled back in her seat, her hands steady on the controls, completely confident in her decision. Behind them, the hangar bay grew smaller and finally disappeared from view. Ahead lay uncertainty, danger, and the unknown. But Elena was ready for all of it, secure in the knowledge that she had chosen exactly the right tool for whatever job awaited them. The journey through hyperspace was always surreal, with the universe reduced to a tunnel of streaming light and distorted space. Elena used the time to review the mission parameters and run through various combat scenarios in her mind. The other pilots were probably doing the same, though their preparations would focus on different things than hers. When they emerged from hyperspace near Kepler 442c, they would face their first real test as a unit. Elena suspected it would also be the moment when her choice of fighter would finally make sense to the rest of the squadron. Until then, she was content to endure their mockery and wait for the truth to reveal itself. The squadron dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, and immediately Elena knew something was terribly wrong. Her sensors, despite being older technology, were picking up readings that didn't match anything in the standard threat database. The other pilots were reporting similar anomalies over the comm channels, their voices tight with confusion. "What the hell am I looking at?" Morrison's voice crackled over the squadron frequency. "My targeting system can't get a lock on anything, but there's definitely something out there." Commander Chen's voice cut through the chatter. "All ships, maintain formation and proceed toward the colony at half speed. Keep your sensors active but weapons cold until we identify the threat." Elena adjusted her approach vector and studied her display more carefully. Unlike the sophisticated sensor suites on the newer fighters, her ship's detection systems were simpler but also more reliable. While the others struggled with conflicting readings and system errors, Elena's screens were showing her something that made her blood run cold. The mining colony wasn't just under attack. It was completely dark, with no energy signatures indicating life support or communications. But that wasn't the most disturbing part. What worried Elena was the pattern of debris floating in the colony's orbital space. It wasn't random damage from pirate raids or civil unrest. This destruction was methodical, systematic, and unlike anything human forces typically left behind. "Commander," Elena called over the comm, "I'm reading some unusual debris patterns around the colony. Whatever hit them was precise and thorough." "Confirmed, Vasquez," Chen replied. "All pilots were dealing with an unknown hostile force. Standard engagement protocols may not apply here." As they drew closer to the colony, more details became visible. The mining platforms that should have been bustling with activity were twisted wreckage, but the damage patterns were strange. Instead of explosive destruction, the structures looked like they had been carefully dismantled by something that understood exactly how to disable them without causing unnecessary collateral damage. "Look at those burn patterns," Captain Torres observed, his voice uneasy. "That's not plasma fire or missile damage. I've never seen anything like it." Elena had to agree. The energy signatures she was detecting suggested weapons technology that operated on completely different principles from human military hardware. Whatever had attacked the colony possessed capabilities that were beyond current Terran understanding. "Movement," Lieutenant Morrison suddenly shouted. "I've got multiple contacts bearing 270 Mark 15. They're fast and closing on our position." Elena immediately began evasive maneuvers, her ship responding with the kind of agility that surprised even her. While the newer fighters were powerful and heavily armed, her chosen vessel was built for a different kind of combat entirely. As the unknown contacts streaked toward them, Elena finally saw what they were facing. The enemy ships were unlike anything in human-designed databases. They were organic-looking, with flowing curves and surfaces that seemed to shift and change as they moved. Their hulls appeared to be made of some kind of living metal that absorbed sensor sweeps and deflected targeting systems. Most disturbing of all, they moved with a coordination that suggested either advanced artificial intelligence or some kind of hive mind. "All ships break formation and engage," Commander Chen ordered. "Watch your spacing and keep your comm channels open." The squadron scattered as the alien vessels swooped down on them like predatory birds. Alina immediately understood why the other pilots were having trouble with their targeting systems. The alien ships weren't just fast. They seemed to anticipate where the human weapons would fire and adjusted their flight paths accordingly. Morrison fired first, his plasma cannons lighting up space with brilliant blue-white beams. The shots passed harmlessly through empty space as his target simply wasn't where his computer predicted it would be. Torres followed with a missile salvo, but the alien ship he targeted released some kind of electronic interference that caused his weapons to detonate prematurely. Alina watched the engagement unfold and realized that brute force wasn't going to work against these opponents. The alien ships were too advanced, too coordinated, and too good at countering conventional human tactics. But as she observed their movement patterns, she began to notice something important. The alien vessels were focused entirely on the newer, more heavily armed human fighters. They seemed to consider Alina's ship either too primitive to be a threat or too insignificant to waste resources attacking. This gave her exactly the opportunity she needed. While Morrison and Torres engaged two of the alien ships in a deadly dance of missed shots and near misses, Alina slipped around the edge of the battle zone. Her ship's stealth capabilities, which had seemed so outdated compared to modern active camouflage systems, were actually working perfectly against the alien sensors. "Vasquez, where the hell are you?" Morrison's voice was strained as he pulled his fighter through a series of desperate evasive maneuvers. "I could use some backup here." Alina didn't respond immediately. Instead, she positioned herself carefully behind one of the alien vessels and studied its behavior patterns. Unlike human ships, which relied on predictable thrust vectors and momentum, these craft seemed to move in ways that defied conventional physics. But Alina noticed that they still had to obey certain laws of motion, especially when they were focused on attacking other targets. She waited for exactly the right moment, when the alien ship was committed to an attack run on Tor's fighter. Then she fired a single, precisely aimed shot with her ship's kinetic cannon. The projectile, moving at a significant fraction of light speed, struck the alien vessel before it could react. The effect was immediate and devastating. Unlike the plasma and energy weapons the other pilots were using, Alina's kinetic projectile punched straight through whatever defensive systems the alien ship possessed. The vessel's organic-looking hull crumpled inward, and the craft tumbled out of control before exploding in a brilliant flash. "Holy shit," Morrison shouted. "Vasquez, how did you do that?" Alina was already moving to engage the next target, her mind calculating angles and timing with the kind of precision that her ship was designed for. "Simple physics," she replied calmly. "Sometimes the old ways work better than the new ones." The remaining alien ships suddenly seemed to realize that Alina's fighter was a serious threat. 3 of them broke off their attacks on the other human pilots and converged on her position, their formation tight and purposeful. Alina smiled grimly and pushed her ship into a complex evasive pattern that took full advantage of her fighter's unique capabilities. While the alien vessels were fast and maneuverable, they were also predictable in their own way. Alina's ship, with its simpler systems and more direct approach to combat, was like a ghost in their sensors. Commander Chen's voice crackled over the comm. "All ships, regroup on Vasquez's position. Follow her lead and target the hostiles with kinetic weapons only." As the squadron reformed around Alina's position, she realized that her choice of fighter was finally making sense to the others. Against conventional human opponents, the newer ships would have been superior. But against an unknown alien threat with advanced defensive systems, sometimes the simplest approach was the most effective. The battle was far from over, but Alina felt confident for the first time since they had arrived in the system. Her ship might look like an antique, but it was exactly what they needed for this particular fight. Now, she just had to prove that her tactical instincts were as reliable as her choice of equipment. The alien ships regrouped and came at them again, but this time Alina could see uncertainty in their movements. The loss of one of their vessels to her kinetic cannon had clearly disrupted whatever tactical algorithm they were using. They were adapting, but slowly, and that gave the human squadron a crucial advantage. "Follow my lead," Alina transmitted to the other pilots. "These things are programmed to counter energy weapons and guided missiles, but they're not expecting simple projectile fire. Keep your shot placement precise and wait for clear firing solutions." Lieutenant Morrison acknowledged, though Alina could hear the disbelief in his voice. "Copy that, Vasquez. I'm switching to kinetic rounds, but my targeting computer is having trouble with manual calculations." "Don't rely on the computer," Alina replied, watching as 3 alien vessels approached in a complex weaving pattern. "Trust your instincts and aim where they're going to be, not where they are." She demonstrated by lining up another shot, waiting for the perfect moment when one of the alien ships would be locked into its attack vector. The key was patience, and understanding that these vessels, for all their advanced technology, still had to follow basic principles of momentum and trajectory when they committed to an attack. Alina fired, and once again her kinetic projectile found its mark. The alien ship's hull buckled and the vessel spiraled away, trailing debris and some kind of organic-looking fluid that might have been its equivalent of blood. Captain Torres managed to score a hit on the next target, his shot less precise than Alina's but still effective enough to cripple the alien vessel. "Got him," Torres shouted. "Vasquez, you're right about these kinetic weapons. Their shields don't seem to work against solid projectiles." Commander Chen's voice cut through the celebration. "Good work, people, but we've got bigger problems. I'm detecting a massive energy signature approaching from the outer system. Whatever these ships came from, it's much larger and heading our way." Alina checked her long-range sensors and felt her stomach drop. The contact Chen was referring to was enormous, easily the size of a capital ship, and it was moving toward them at a speed that should have been impossible for something that massive. More concerning was the energy output, which was orders of magnitude higher than anything in human space. "All ships, we need to complete our mission and get out of here," Chen ordered. "Vasquez, can your ship penetrate the colony's defensive perimeter and scan for survivors?" Alina studied the twisted wreckage of the mining colony and realized why Chen was asking her specifically. The colony's automated defense systems were still partially active, but they were malfunctioning and firing on anything that approached. The newer fighters, with their active sensor arrays and electronic signatures, would trigger the defensive grid immediately. But Alina's ship, with its more primitive systems, might be able to slip through undetected. "Affirmative, Commander," Alina replied. "Give me cover and I'll see what's left down there." Alina broke away from the main engagement and approached the colony on a careful, indirect trajectory. Behind her, she could hear the other pilots continuing their fight with the remaining alien vessels, their kinetic weapons slowly winning the battle. But time was running short, and that massive contact was getting closer with every passing minute. The colony's defensive grid was a mess of randomly firing laser arrays and missile pods, most of them damaged and operating on emergency power. Alina threaded her way through the lethal web of defensive fire, using her ship's superior maneuverability and low sensor signature to avoid detection. It was like flying through a storm, except the lightning was specifically designed to kill her. She reached the main habitat module and began scanning for life signs. The results were not encouraging. Most of the colony showed no signs of life, and the areas that did have power were sealed against the vacuum where hull breaches had occurred. But then Alina detected something that made her pause. Deep in the colony's core, in what appeared to be an emergency shelter, there were definitely human life signs. Not many, maybe a dozen people at most, but they were alive and their shelter still had power and life support. The problem was getting to them. "Commander, I've got survivors in the colony's emergency shelter," Alina reported. "But they're sealed in deep, and the docking bays are completely destroyed. I'm going to need to find another way in." "Negative, Vasquez," Chen replied immediately. "That massive contact is less than 30 minutes out, and we need to withdraw. We can't risk the entire squadron for a handful of survivors." Alina understood the tactical logic, but she also understood something else. Those people down there were counting on the rescue mission to succeed. They had probably been hiding in their shelter for hours, hoping that someone would come for them. She couldn't just leave them to die when she was the only one who could reach them. "Commander, requesting permission to attempt a rescue," Alina transmitted. My ship is small enough to fit through the damaged sections of the colony. I can dock directly with the emergency shelter and extract the survivors. Absolutely not, Chen responded. The risk is too high and we don't have time. All ships form up for withdrawal. Alina looked at her tactical display and made a decision that she knew would probably end her career, assuming she survived the next hour. Instead of rejoining the squadron, she turned toward the colony and began looking for a way into the damaged structure. Vasquez, what the hell are you doing? Morrison's voice crackled over the comm. Get back in formation. Sorry, Commander, Alina replied, cutting through a gap in the colony's outer hull. I'm not leaving those people behind. Continue withdrawal without me. Commander Chen's voice was ice-cold. Captain Vasquez, you are directly disobeying orders. Return to formation immediately. Alina switched off her comm system and focused on navigating through the colony's twisted corridors. Her ship was just barely small enough to fit through the damaged sections, and she had to be incredibly careful not to snag her wings on the jagged metal edges. Behind her, she could hear the sound of the other fighters' engines as they withdrew from the system, leaving her alone with the approaching alien vessel. She finally reached the emergency shelter and saw that the survivors had managed to rig an emergency docking tube to one of the damaged airlocks. Alina carefully maneuvered her ship into position and felt the mechanical clamps engage with a satisfying thunk. The survivors were a mix of miners, engineers, and colony administrators, all of them looking exhausted and terrified. But they moved quickly and efficiently as Alina helped them transfer to her ship's small passenger compartment. It was going to be cramped, but everyone would fit. Is anyone else coming? Asked Dr. Sarah Martinez, the colony's chief medical officer, as she strapped herself into one of the emergency seats. It's just me, Alina replied, sealing the airlock and beginning her emergency undocking sequence. But don't worry, we're getting out of here. As Alina guided her ship back through the colony's damaged structure, she could see the massive alien vessel approaching on her sensors. It was even larger than she had thought, and its energy signature was unlike anything she had ever encountered. But she also noticed something important about her own ship's sensor readings. Whatever technology that massive alien vessel was using to track and target human ships, it wasn't picking up Alina's fighter. Her choice of an older, simpler vessel had given her advantages she hadn't even considered when she selected it. Not only could she slip past defensive grids and alien sensors, but she was also apparently invisible to their most advanced tracking systems. Alina smiled grimly as she cleared the colony's wreckage and began plotting a course away from the system. Her squadron might have abandoned her, but she had accomplished the mission. The survivors were safe, and she was beginning to understand exactly why her ship was called the Ghosthawk. Now she just had to get everyone home alive, with a massive alien vessel hunting for them across the vast emptiness of space. Alina pushed the Ghosthawk to its maximum silent running configuration, shutting down all non-essential systems and running on minimal power. The 12 survivors in her passenger compartment were quiet, understanding instinctively that their lives depended on remaining as invisible as possible to whatever was hunting them. Dr. Martinez, who had positioned herself where she could see Alina's displays, whispered, "How big is that thing following us?" Alina glanced at her passive sensors and felt a chill run down her spine. The alien vessel was massive, easily 3 kilometers long, and it was conducting a methodical search pattern that suggested it knew exactly what it was looking for. Worse, it had deployed smaller craft that were spreading out across the system like a net, trying to catch anything that might be escaping. Big enough to vaporize our entire squadron, Alina replied quietly, but it can't find us if we're careful. The truth was more complicated than that. Alina was beginning to understand that her ship's design wasn't just about stealth or simplicity. The Ghosthawk had been built during a different era of warfare, when the ability to disappear completely was more valuable than raw firepower. Every system on the ship was designed to minimize its signature, from the engine emissions to the hull composition. While modern fighters relied on active camouflage and electronic countermeasures, the Ghosthawk used passive stealth that was nearly impossible to detect. Its hull absorbed sensor sweeps instead of deflecting them, and its engine design created exhaust that dissipated quickly into the cosmic background radiation. "Captain Vasquez," whispered Engineer Chen Wei, one of the colony survivors, I've been studying your ship's design while we've been sitting here. This isn't a standard Terran Defense Corps fighter, is it? Elena smiled grimly. No, it's not. The Ghosthawk was originally built for special operations behind enemy lines, deep reconnaissance, surgical strikes, extraction missions. It's designed to get in and out without anyone ever knowing it was there. That explained why the other pilots had mocked her choice. They saw an old ship with primitive weapons and outdated systems. They didn't understand that the Ghosthawk was built for a completely different kind of warfare than what they were trained for. Elena watched as one of the alien search craft passed within a few hundred kilometers of their position, its sensors sweeping back and forth in a pattern that should have detected them easily. But the Ghosthawk's stealth systems held, and the alien vessel continued on its search pattern without realizing they were there. How long can we stay hidden like this? Dr. Martinez asked. As long as we need to, Elena replied. The Ghosthawk can run silent for days if necessary. The question is whether we try to make a break for it now or wait for them to move on. Elena studied the tactical situation carefully. The massive alien vessel was positioned between them and the most direct route back to Terran space, and the smaller search craft had spread out to cover all the likely escape vectors. But Elena noticed something interesting about their search pattern. They were focusing on areas where a conventional ship would try to hide, behind asteroids or in the shadow of the system's outer planets. They weren't looking for a ship that could disappear in plain sight. Elena made her decision and began plotting a course that would take them directly through the middle of the alien search formation. Dr. Martinez saw what she was doing and looked alarmed. "Are you insane?" the doctor whispered. "You're flying us right at them." "Sometimes the best place to hide is in plain sight," Elena replied, engaging the Ghosthawk's engines at their quietest setting. "They're looking for a ship that's trying to hide. They won't expect us to fly right past them." Elena's plan was audacious to the point of seeming suicidal, but it was based on a solid understanding of how stealth actually worked. The alien vessels were using active sensors, which meant they were flooding space with energy and listening for reflections. But the Ghosthawk's hull was designed to absorb that energy rather than reflect it back. They moved slowly and steadily through the alien search formation, passing so close to one of the smaller craft that Elena could see details of its organic-looking hull through her viewports. The alien ship's sensors swept right over them multiple times, but never registered their presence. "This is impossible," whispered Mining Foreman Rodriguez. "How are they not seeing us?" Elena kept her eyes on her displays, watching the alien vessels continue their search pattern as the Ghosthawk ghosted past them undetected. "Different technology, different assumptions," she replied. "They're looking for energy signatures and electronic emissions. We're giving them neither." The massive alien vessel loomed ahead of them, its hull stretching out like a small city floating in space. Elena could see weapon emplacements and sensor arrays that dwarfed anything in human space, but she also noticed something that gave her hope. The alien ship's sensors were designed for long-range detection and engagement. They weren't optimized for spotting small craft at close range. Elena adjusted their course to pass directly under the alien vessel's hull, using its own bulk to mask their approach to the hyperspace jump point. It was incredibly risky, but it was also the last thing the aliens would expect. As they passed beneath the massive ship, Elena could feel the gravitational effects of its enormous mass. The Ghosthawk's navigation systems had to work harder to maintain their course, but the stealth systems continued to function perfectly. They were so close to the alien vessel that Elena could see individual details of its construction, but they remained completely invisible to its sensors. "Jump coordinates locked," Elena announced quietly as they cleared the alien vessel's sensor shadow. "Everyone hold on." Elena engaged the hyperspace drive and felt the familiar sensation of space-time folding around them. As the stars stretched into lines and the alien fleet disappeared behind them, she finally allowed herself to relax slightly. Dr. Martinez looked around the passenger compartment at the other survivors, all of whom were staring at Elena with a mixture of awe and disbelief. "I don't understand how that worked," the doctor said. "We flew right through their entire fleet, and they never even knew we were there." "That's what the Ghosthawk was designed for," Elena replied, checking their hyperspace trajectory. "Most people think stealth is about being invisible, but real stealth is about being unimportant, making the enemy think you're not worth noticing." Engineer Chen Wei shook his head in amazement. Your squadron mates mocked you for choosing an old ship, didn't they? Elena smiled. They did, but they were thinking about the wrong kind of fight. Sometimes the best weapon isn't the biggest or the newest. Sometimes it's the one your enemy isn't expecting. As the Ghosthawk raced through hyperspace towards safety, Elena reflected on the mission and what it had taught her about her chosen ship. The other pilots had focused on firepower and speed, assuming that superior technology would always win the day. But Elena had chosen the Ghosthawk for a different reason entirely. She had chosen it because sometimes the old ways were the best ways, and because there was no substitute for a tool designed specifically for the job at hand. Now, she just had to get back to base and explain to Commander Chen why disobeying orders had been the right choice. The survivors were safe, the mission was accomplished, and Elena had proven that the Ghosthawk was exactly what she had always known it to be, the perfect ship for an impossible job. The Ghosthawk emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Terran space, and Elena immediately began broadcasting her identification codes. The survivors in her passenger compartment looked relieved to see familiar stars in the viewports, but Elena knew the real challenge was just beginning. She had disobeyed direct orders and risked her career to save 12 people. Now she had to face the consequences. "This is Orbital Station Prometheus Control," came the response to her transmission. "Captain Vasquez, you are ordered to proceed directly to Docking Bay 7 for immediate debriefing. Commander Chen is waiting for you." Elena acknowledged the order and began her approach to the station. Behind her, Dr. Martinez and the other survivors were preparing for their arrival, gathering what few personal possessions they had managed to salvage from the colony. Elena could see the gratitude in their eyes, but she wondered if it would be enough to save her career. As the Ghosthawk settled into its docking cradle, Elena saw the familiar figures of her squadron mates waiting on the hangar deck. Morrison, Torres, and the others were standing near their own fighters, which showed scorch marks and minor battle damage from their engagement with the alien vessels. But their expressions were unreadable as Elena shut down her systems and prepared to face whatever consequences awaited her. Commander Chen approached as Elena opened her canopy and helped the survivors disembark. The commander's expression was stern, but Elena noticed something different in her eyes. Instead of the anger she expected, there was something that looked almost like approval. "Captain Vasquez," Chen said formally, "you are confined to quarters pending a formal review of your actions during the rescue mission. The survivors will be debriefed separately." Elena nodded and watched as medical personnel led the colony survivors away for examination and treatment. Dr. Martinez looked back and mouthed a silent, "Thank you," before disappearing into the medical bay. Elena felt a surge of satisfaction despite her uncertain future. Whatever happened to her career, those 12 people were alive because of her decision. As Elena walked toward her quarters under escort, she heard Lieutenant Morrison call out from behind her, "Hey, Vasquez." Elena turned to see Morrison approaching, his expression confused and somewhat embarrassed. "I need to ask you something," he said. "What the hell kind of ship were you flying out there? My sensors couldn't track you half the time, and when you vanished into that alien search pattern, I thought for sure you were dead." Elena smiled grimly. "It's called a Ghosthawk, Morrison, and that's exactly what it was designed to do." Captain Torres joined them, shaking his head in disbelief. "I've been a pilot for 8 years, and I've never seen anything like what you did out there, flying right through their fleet like you were invisible. How is that even possible?" "Different tools for different jobs," Elena replied. "You chose ships for their firepower and speed. I chose mine for its ability to disappear." The escort officer cleared his throat, reminding Elena that she was supposed to be heading to her quarters. As they walked away, she heard Torres say to Morrison, "Did you see the look on the alien ships when she nailed them with those kinetic rounds? Like they couldn't believe what was happening." Elena spent the next 6 hours in her quarters, writing her mission report and trying to explain her actions in terms that a court-martial board would understand. She had violated direct orders and risked military resources on what could be seen as a futile gesture. But she had also saved 12 lives and proven that sometimes unconventional thinking was exactly what a situation required. When the summons came for her hearing, Elena was ready. She walked into the conference room expecting to face a panel of senior officers ready to end her career. Instead, she found Commander Chen sitting alone at the table, reviewing a data pad with an expression she couldn't read. "Sit down, Captain," Chen said without looking up. Alina took the indicated chair and waited. Finally, Chen set down the data pad and looked directly at her. "Your mission report makes for interesting reading," Chen began. "Particularly the part where you explain your choice of fighter and how it enabled you to complete the rescue mission." Alina remained silent, unsure what response was expected. Chen continued, "I've also reviewed the technical specifications of your ship and the after-action reports from your squadron mates. It seems that your antique performed capabilities that our newest fighters couldn't match." "Yes, ma'am," Alina replied carefully. Chen leaned back in her chair and studied Alina with an expression that was impossible to interpret. "Captain Vasquez, what you did out there was either the stupidest thing I've ever seen a pilot attempt, or it was the most brilliant tactical improvisation in recent memory. The question is which one it was." Alina took a deep breath. "Ma'am, I chose the Ghosthawk because I knew we would eventually face situations where stealth and precision would matter more than raw firepower. I didn't know we'd encounter alien technology, but I knew that modern military thinking was focused on the wrong priorities." "Explain." "We've been preparing to fight enemies who think like us, who use technology similar to ours, who fight according to principles we understand," Alina said. "But when we encountered something truly alien, our advanced weapons and sophisticated sensors were useless. Sometimes the simplest approach is the most effective one." Chen nodded slowly, and the decision to disobey orders and attempt the rescue. Alina met her commander's gaze directly. "Ma'am, those people were counting on us. They were alive, they were reachable, and I was the only one who could get to them. I couldn't live with leaving them behind just because it was tactically inconvenient." Chen was quiet for a long moment, and Alina began to wonder if she had just ended her career with that statement. Finally, the commander spoke again. "Captain Vasquez, I'm recommending you for promotion to major and assignment to a new special operations squadron. Your mission will be to evaluate and test unconventional tactical approaches for dealing with unknown threats." Alina blinked in surprise. "Ma'am." Chen smiled for the first time since Alina had entered the room. "What happened out there proved something that military leadership has been debating for years. Sometimes old technology and unconventional thinking can outperform the latest innovations. We need pilots who can think outside standard doctrine." Alina felt a surge of relief mixed with excitement. "What about my disobedience of orders?" "What disobedience?" Chen asked innocently. "According to my final report, you were assigned to conduct a deep reconnaissance mission to verify the status of colony survivors. The fact that you successfully extracted them was just good tactical improvisation." Alina realized what Chen was doing and felt grateful for her commander's support. "Thank you, ma'am." Chen stood up and walked toward the door. As she reached it, she turned back to Alina with a knowing smile. "By the way, Major, there's something you should know about your ship. The Ghosthawk isn't just any old fighter. It's one of only 12 ever built, originally designed for a classified program that most people don't know exists." Alina looked confused. "I don't understand, ma'am." Chen's smile widened. "Those 12 ships were built for pilots who could think independently and operate behind enemy lines without support. They were given to people who could be trusted to make the right decision even when it meant breaking the rules." Alina felt pieces clicking together in her mind. "You knew I would choose the Ghosthawk." "I hoped you would," Chen replied. "And when the other pilots mocked your choice, I knew I had found the right person for the new squadron." As Alina left the conference room, she realized that everything that had happened had been carefully orchestrated. Her squadron mates hadn't been mocking her choice randomly. They had been testing her resolve. Commander Chen hadn't abandoned her during the mission. She had been giving Alina the freedom to prove what the Ghosthawk could do. Walking back through the hangar bay, Alina saw her ship sitting in its berth, looking as primitive and unimpressive as ever. But now she understood what it really represented. The Ghosthawk wasn't just a fighter. It was a symbol of a different way of thinking about warfare. As she approached her ship, Alina heard Lieutenant Morrison's voice from behind her. "Hey, Major Vasquez, congratulations on the promotion." Alina turned to see her former squadron mates approaching, their expressions now showing respect rather than mockery. "So," Morrison continued with a grin, "I heard Commander Chen whispered something to you after the mission debrief. Mind sharing what she said?" Alina looked back at the Ghosthawk and smiled. She told me that some ships are chosen for their pilots and some pilots are chosen for their ships. The Ghosthawk and I were meant for each other. Tors nodded appreciatively. Well, next time we're facing unknown aliens with impossible technology, I know who I want leading the mission. Elena climbed into her ship's cockpit for the post-flight maintenance check, feeling more satisfied with her career choice than ever before. The other pilots finally understood why she had chosen the Ghosthawk, and more importantly, she had proven that sometimes the oldest solutions were the best ones. As she ran through her post-flight checklist, Elena reflected on how the mission had changed everything. Her squadron mates no longer saw her as the pilot with the obsolete ship. Instead, they saw her as the person who could accomplish impossible missions with unconventional methods. The Ghosthawk hummed quietly around her, its systems responding to her touch with the familiarity of a trusted partner. Elena knew that whatever challenges awaited her new squadron, she would face them with exactly the right tool for the job. Sometimes that was all it took to change everything.